This week on SnarkSquad Pod, we are joined by Caitlin Hoffmeister to talk about Unicorn Store. Welcome back to SnarkSquad Pod. I'm Nicole Sweeney.
My name is Marines, and this week we are joined by Caitlin.
Hi, I am so excited to be here. I get to work with Nicole at Complexly, and I produce SciShow. I also produce the podcast SciShow Tangents and have my own podcast called You're Doing Just Fine.
That's so fitting for the media that we are covering today. This week we are talking about Unicorn Store, and it is Brie Larson's directorial debut. It came out in 2017, I believe, at the Toronto Film Festival, but it was just released on Netflix recently. And this is about a woman named Kit, and she is basically the human embodiment of Lisa Frank. And she flunks out of art school and has to return to her parents' house to live in their basement. In an attempt to not feel like a total failure and to grow up, she gets a job at a PR agency as a temp. She also starts to receive mysterious and elaborate invitations to a place called the store. She decides to visit the store because it promises to have everything she will ever need, and there she finds a salesman who basically tells her that she will be able to own a unicorn, what she's always wanted, if she deserves it, if she gets her life together, if she can prove that she can provide a place for the unicorn to live and financial stability and like a happy, positive environment. Meanwhile, as she's working at the PR agency, her boss is being like creepy and sexual harassing in a way that also kind of makes Kit think that she can contribute to the PR agency. Things end up not working too well there because she goes full Lisa Frank on a proposal that she's giving for a vacuum company and nobody appreciates it. She ends up being half quitting and like half getting fired from there, and focuses on doing what she needs to do to get the unicorn. But along the way, she's also met a guy who works at the hardware store. He's the one helping her build the unicorn stable. And he finds out what's going on. And he's a little like, that sounds really weird. And like, someone's going to steal your identity. So they go back to the store and it's all kind of taken apart. So they're figuring that it was all a con until the very end when the salesman calls back again and says the unicorn is here. And Kit goes and actually finds the unicorn, but she also realizes that she doesn't need it. She's formed other connections with people. She's kind of like grown up in her own way. And so she doesn't take the unicorn home with her. And that's the end of the movie.
So we are going to start where we always start. Caitlin, did you like this movie?
I loved this movie. I was like, okay, that was the perfect movie. Done. Like, what are we going to talk about?
That's the episode. Episode's over.
But then I was a little nervous because I was like, I can't talk to Nicole and Mari about it yet. I'm going to like look up what other people are saying about it. I watched it on Friday as soon as it came out, as soon as it was up on Netflix, and people were judging it really harshly and being like it was not realistic. It's called Unicorn Store, people. Right. And so I'm like, now I'm ready to like fight for it.
I also enjoyed it a lot. I didn't have any expectations going in except for, I mean, part of the reason that this was even like picked on our radar is because Nicole and I loved Captain Marvel, and we were like Brie Larson all the time. And then I saw this, and you know that kind of thing. So I was prepared to love it just because Brie Larson. But other than that, I didn't have expectations, and I ended up really loving it too. I also went and read reviews, and I don't know. I guess I get where some people are coming from. I totally do not get where other people are coming from.
Yeah,
I think they're being unnecessarily harsh and I hate to say like don't get it because that's almost insulting, but like I feel like they maybe missed the point that I saw in it. But yeah, for the most part, I thought it was great. And I was entertained the entire time I was watching it, and I'm excited to talk to you guys about it.
I also loved this movie, and I also read some reviews of this movie. I think one thing about this movie is that I think it very much has a target audience, it exists for certain people. Some of the critical reviews that I saw of this movie were kind of, I don't know, the ones that I was more dismissive of were coming from a place that I was like, this isn't not like, you are not addressing what this movie is addressing. And so I'm just like not interested in that critique. So I feel like squarely in the zone of people that this movie exists for. And I was super primed. I watched the trailer for this movie many times just because I was so excited, and like the trailer made me really happy. And like the trailer is a very fair portrayal of what the movie is. Like it's the basic premise and plot of the movie is fairly simple, and the trailer lays that out for you very cleanly. And I don't know. I was very excited to watch this movie, and it did not disappoint.
I definitely was a little fearful. I think I watched part of the trailer and I was like, I'm in. I don't want to watch anymore because I don't want to I just want to experience it. But there are some movies like it that are like Post-Grad is one that I always I was like worried it could be like that with Alexis Bledel, where she's just like, I'm sort of lost, but it's okay. I'm Rory Gilmore. I got this amazing job. And so I was a little worried it would just be like she would figure it out and have no struggle. And the magic element of it, I was just so pleased with and thought it was so sometimes a little nerve-wracking and scary, sometimes just wonderful, I was happy with all of it.
I think the magical realism of this movie is definitely a piece of it that will make it work for some people and not work for others. And that falls in kind of, I think, more the camp of, I don't know, complaints that make sense to me. I think, I don't know, maybe I'm overstating it because I think you're wrong if you don't like it. But I get it.
It reminded me also, I don't know why we're starting this off by saying all the things it reminded me of, but it reminded me a lot of 13 Going on 30.
Yeah.
The same, coming of age, magical realism. And I feel like if you're listening to this and thinking, well, will I enjoy it? If you are a millennial or around that age who enjoyed 13 Going on 30, I feel like you will enjoy this also. If you go into it expecting that kind of coming of age, magical realism, kind of fun, but has a nice heart to the movie kind of movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. I mean, and so we have talked before about our love of coming of age movies, and that's very much what this is. And I find this relatable. The struggle of being, in your 20s and not knowing what the heck you want to do with your life, and the sort of mixed and conflicting messages around what it means to be an adult, and also what it means to be yourself. And
yeah, and I think that Kit is just in a world that isn't built for her. And so that can be a metaphor for a creative person. That can be a metaphor for a woman in the workplace. That can be a metaphor for someone on the autism spectrum, which you could argue maybe that's what we're dealing with in this movie. And she's we are also living in a world that's not built for unicorns. And she meets, Virgil, best named character ever, and they're going to build a place for a unicorn and build a pocket of the world that Kit can be fully at home in. And I just love that. I feel like I'm becoming more aware, and I think culture, pop culture is becoming more aware of people who just are unique, and letting people be unique and being the world is not really built for all of the uniqueness that everybody brings. And I just love that unicorn stores can pop up and be okay, we're going to help you carve out your spot in the world, and you're allowed to be there, and you're allowed to paint your vacuum with glitter. And I just love Kit. That's how I'll end every sentence.
Yes.
I don't enjoy a lot of generational discourse and discourse around millennials and all of that. But I think it's really interesting because as a group of people that came of age near around a recession, I think that this is and that entire idea of coming of age a little late and leaving your parents' homes a little late and all of the things that are measurable and that we see is kind of a trend for people near or around our age. I think this is just a story built for that. And I think in a lot of reviews I saw, I was like, yeah, but you don't get it. This is like a real thing. And also, like in times of recession, the first things that kind of suffer are things that are seen as quote unquote like disposable, like art, and how do you make a living nowadays as an artist. And so seeing kind of that struggle I thought was really cool in a movie, and seeing her trying to like piece it all together. I appreciated that.
I mean, the movie explicitly uses the words like the right kind of girl, like that's what she has to become, to like receive the unicorn. But even before that, even before she finds out about the store and goes there, like that's already what's happening. She's already trying to become, this one idea of what the right kind of girl is. She's like, okay, I gotta be more like Kevin. Get her job through the temp agency and whatnot. But then like the process of making her home and her life ready for this unicorn is about like redefining this idea of like what it means to be the right kind of girl. And instead of opting for this externally driven idea that she was operating off of with the temp agency, and both by going there in the first place and also with the ways in which her like creepy boss was.
Oh God, I love him so much.
Performance. Yes.
Hamish Linklater. So I just love that actor so much, and he can ride that creepy line so well. Like he's as a person, like if that was my friend, I'd be like, kick him in the balls and
you gotta
run.
go.
But like as an actor, I'm like, he works with so many like strong women directors, and like I know that those actors have to feel safe with him. Like, he just does such a good creepy job.
And he sells it like immediately. Just like that moment where they meet in the copy room, you're like, oh no, like this guy's no kid.
Yeah, it's great.
But yeah, and the whole movie is her like coming to this, sort of separate definition of like what the right kind of girl is going to be for her, like, what she wants that to be. And I don't know, I feel a little bit, I guess, weird in defending the movie because there's a little bit of like self-justifying, back to Mari's point about, not wanting to say, oh, you just don't get it. But like that is a little bit of what it's doing. And I don't know.
And it is like, it's not treating the movie how it's asking to be treated, I think, to write it off. Like it's, I always think of Wes Anderson in this way. Like some movies you get really sucked into that world, and some movies you're just like, I am watching a movie and I love watching this movie. And this is like the things that we're allowed to do in movies. Like, why not have her work at a PR agency and let that be like an emblem for something? Like she says it's a PR agency. It's not a PR agency. It's an advertising agency, but she doesn't know what those things are. She doesn't know. She's trying to check off boxes. Like one of the critiques I saw is that she goes to art school and they like grade her on this checkbox thing. And I'm like, that's not really happening. That's her perception. Like, it's like we're let this be a formal piece of art. It doesn't have to be a realistic piece of art to still be powerful.
That scene is so obviously like a farce, as a moment that I am bewildered by how you could read that.
That would never happen. There's a unicorn.
No, you gotta go. If you're already saying that, like, turn it off. This is not for you.
I think it's really interesting because the whole thing is like, she's trying to tick off these boxes of being more responsible, even through like the store. But the entire thing is that she's trying to be the right kind of girl, be more responsible, but in order to receive a unicorn. And there's still like it's like she's trying to be more responsible, but the end game is still for her to carve out space for magic in her life. And so, like, yes, this is definitely her perception. I saw critiques also of like the one-sided portrayal of like office life and like, you know, the people working there and how that was all bland and drab. But the idea is that it was bland and drab to her. This is her perception of like heading into the work world and doing something she really wasn't passionate for, or she didn't care for. So all of these things, I think when you're watching this, you have to realize that you're watching it all through her lens.
Mm-hmm. There is something that I really love and enjoy visually about the fact that the first shot of her as an adult is that bit where she's having her piece critiqued, and it's, you know, all rainbows and she's covered in rainbows. And then like the first thing that she does at her job is make black and white photocopies. I like that sort of comparison. I think, I don't know. I loved that.
And she's supposed to be making in the beginning, I think, a self-portrait.
And yes.
And then even when she's making black and white copies, she stops and makes a photocopy of her hand. Mm-hmm. Like she can't not express herself even when she's being like literally boxed in like cubicle world.
Which also kind of points to like her essential flaw, I think, as a character, and one that the movie explicitly calls her out for is being quite selfish. Mm-hmm. You see a little bit of that as well in like the pairing of these two moments.
Yeah, and I think it's I don't know if I'm shoehorning this idea in here, but I want to try and look at this. When I was watching, I kind of kept waiting for her parents to be like, oh yeah, like last time you had this mental breakdown, or oh yeah, do we need to call Dr. So-and-so? Like there's just like, I've seen other movies like this where you're with your protagonist and then they're like, oh, actually this is an unstable, unreliable character or unreliable narrator for us. Uh-huh. And I really I want to play with the idea that Kit really I think some other critiques I saw is that she's like this artistic, beautiful, girly girl. Like she would not have been shunned at school, but if she doesn't understand the social interactions that are happening around her, she would be. Like she talks to her Care Bears. She has epic meltdowns. Like it's completely possible that Kit is on the autism spectrum or has this interacts with the world slightly off from most of the people around her, misaligned from most of the people around her, I should say. And I loved that this movie just let us hang out with her and didn't make it about that. They're like, this is the rules of this world according to Kit. Buckle up. You know, we're here. Like she's still a whole complex person, no matter what interaction she has with her parents, who we should talk about her parents because they're amazing. But there's just, I loved that we just got to be in this world with this narrator, and there was no she actually was the reliable narrator. We invested in her and it paid off. I really love that Brie Larson and the screenwriter were comfortable being in this world and didn't have to try to explain any of it to someone that's I don't know, a normie is the only thing I can think of right now. They weren't trying to explain it to just a cisgender white male who's never dealt with mental illness or struggle. You know, they were
yeah. And you mentioned the point of, she was conventionally girly, whatnot. Obviously, there is, I think, a very particular millennial white woman experience going on here, and that is a fair critique of the thing. But I don't know how many female coming of age stories I have seen that embrace this level of glitter and rainbows girliness, you know, like this very particular kind of femininity as an adult.
I think that I could say that there are a lot of these things that the movie could have gone deeper into, which I think is also part of why people didn't exactly connect with this, but that it wasn't this movie and it wasn't this message. I did appreciate that even though this was a very specific millennial white woman kind of movie, it didn't shy away from that. So it was very clear, and I feel like it we understood as an audience that she was going through these particular problems, it didn't diminish those problems, but it was also careful to say she's got a support system. She can live in her parents' basement.
Right.
There are other people whose problems are not necessarily worse, but that don't exist within those parameters of having like a support system. So she got to interact with some of the kids that her parents were helping, you know, or even Virgil, who basically was like, you're mad at your mom because she wants to make you quinoa. Like, really? You know, like, so it like called it out so that we knew that the movie was aware of her particular privilege, but at the same time, it didn't lessen her problems and, you know, what she was going through within the scope of who she was and her own privilege.
Yeah.
So speaking of her parents who loved her and supported her and like took care of her, but you know, parents just don't understand. Like that's like the whole dynamic going on here. How did you guys find the portrayal of the parents and her relationship with them?
I want to believe that Bradley Whitford as her dad, that is like the true Bradley Whitford. Like, I thought he just like stepped into that role, and like I know he's like sort of like a snarky, funny person in real life, and I feel like maybe that's an act, and his true form is Kit's like really like kind, supportive, maybe a little needy dad.
Do you want me to be your best friend?
Yeah. I know, it was a genuine offer.
This movie definitely does like deal with some particular stereotypes, like office people, and like, you know, the parents are like crunchy granola parents. But there is nothing I love more than a solid crunchy granola parent. Like in a movie, I don't know why every time I'm like, yes, give me a parent that wants to talk about emotions, or that is, you know, they gave her like a very explicit like sex talk. Like that's the kind of parents that these are.
Right.
And it's a stereotype that I love. And again, I understand if people are like, seen it or whatever, but I just loved it. And it made sense to me that these two people produced Kit and who she was. You know what I mean? Like that, the environment that they created made a person so expressive and so full of color and glitter. And even when they were not understanding each other throughout the movie, because, you know, she wasn't necessarily doing a great job at expressing how she felt or them understanding how she felt, you still understood their dynamic and why one kind of produced the other. So I loved their portrayal. I loved it in the context of the story. And all around positive feelings for the parents.
I also really loved the like argument that they get in at the camp. I was thinking about it because our last episode, we talked quite a bit about our dislike for miscommunication plots. And that conversation was really interesting because there are a couple places in that conversation where like there's like sort of like stopping short of saying everything that you like they really sort of feel and mean in that moment, and they sort of keep talking past each other. But like it worked so well because it was just so believably how this conversation would happen, because they're going into this conversation with all of the baggage of, you know, her whole life as part of this family. And so like there are several moments where, you know, like Kit will say something, and then her mom, like when she storms off like she's like, I'm sorry, we're not, you know, the perfect parents, and she's like completely dismissing like the last thing that Kit said, because, you know, there's so much else going into that moment. And I don't know, I just really like, it's like sad for Kit watching her fight with her parents, but there's this other level in which I'm like, yeah, that's what it looks like.
Yeah, and I loved it too because it's exactly super believable, and it's not like a plot device. It's a little bit raising the stakes for Kit because it's putting her unicorn pet in danger, but it is just true. It's just like raising the stakes and not letting us escape. Mari, what you were saying about people have it harder than Kit, it's like it's making it very clear to us that we cannot blame this on her upbringing, and we can blame everything on everybody's upbringing. We're all weird, but like, but it's not like she was never in danger. She was never like not loved or not listened to, you know, like, and so I just love that real family moment. And I also felt like that's where I was going to get some sort of like shoe that was going to drop, that I was going to get like a little exposition captain, you know, that comes in and is like, do we need to talk to Dr. So-and-so? And are you taking your medication or something? Like, and I just loved that, no, they just care about her and they're frustrated. And they all are that way. They all care about each other and are frustrated.
This whole movie is like very far from my own experience in a lot of ways, and my parents are very far from the crunchy granola parents. But watching that like interaction, I swear I've had something like that conversation with my mom before. and it's so funny because she starts at the truth circle and she's like, I never had a pet. And it's not an accusation. It's just true. She never had a pet growing up. So she she was a lonely kid. So she started having imaginary friends. But it's the kind of thing that her parents are like, well, we failed you, you know? And I feel like I've said things like that to my mom, like, oh, you know, you were overprotective. And she's like, oh, great, I failed as a mom. But the thing about parenting, is I think that it's just an exercise in doing your best, but messing up your kid anyway, you know, because we're all flawed humans, so that conversation was just a point where it was, again, super relatable because these parents are trying so hard, but you know, they're talking past each other, as you say, and they did what they thought was right. They did their best, but at the end of the day, they made a human who has to work out her own shit anyway, regardless of what they did in her upbringing.
Yeah. So we haven't talked at all about Samuel L. Jackson as the salesman at the unicorn store and his very like whimsical portrayal. One of the reasons that I kept watching the trailer for this movie is that I also was watching a ton of like press stuff for Captain Marvel, and like the two of them did so many junkets together, obviously, because Captain Marvel is basically just a big buddy cop movie. And so like, and they had done a movie together before this as well. And then they filmed, I forget what the sequence is exactly of Endgame. I know Endgame was filmed before Captain Marvel, and then also they filmed this. I don't know in what order all of these things happened, but like they clearly spent like a year of their lives together all the time, I guess. Yeah. And like, and you can see that in the camaraderie that they had in all of their press junket stuff together. And I just thought that was really cute and sweet. And so I don't know how or why he was cast in this role, but I thought he was absolutely like delightful. And there are things about him in this role that are very particular to, it's like, it is him doing this role, you know, that like sells it.
Yeah. The cast is like unbelievable in this movie. Like, it's just like, it's a very sweet, great script, but like every single role is like, it's hard to remember their names because you're like, and then Brie does this, and then Samuel Jackson does this,
and then Joan Cusack.
Yeah. But I feel like that role would have been charming and amazing no matter what. But it could have been like before Virgil sees him, like it could have been a very creepy role. And I feel like Samuel L. Jackson really brings this whimsy, like you're saying, that like, I'm like, oh man, like I could easily be accidentally kidnapped by Samuel L. Jackson because I'd be like, he would never hurt me.
I would follow him.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
he's
incredible.
To be clear, by him in like his portrayal as the salesman. I mean, like in other contexts,
yes,
very different. But the way that he plays this role, yes, 100%. I mentioned this before, but I really loved the scene where he gets mad at her for being selfish. Everything about that scene, him being like, do you think all of this is for you? And her kind of sulky, well, you kind of said it was.
And that's when you realize you don't actually know his name. Like, she's never introduced herself to him.
Yes, yeah. The credits list him as the salesman, and yeah, but like, you know, just the way that he goes on about like the store, like there are people who are here, and you're being incredibly selfish right now, and I don't know. I loved that scene.
Mm-hmm. We mentioned him a little bit earlier, but another character that I liked in this amazing cast was Virgil. I wasn't sure where they were going with his character at first, whether it's going to be like friend or romance or more, but I think it's a little ambiguous in the way, I mean, I don't know. It did have like a romantic tinge towards the end, but I liked that he is kind of set up opposite of Kit, and that their big like confrontation is just about whether or not he likes her. And I thought that, you know, just like, I'm here, I do like you, like he's trying for human connection, but Kit, in all of the ways that she's confused and all of the ways that she doesn't necessarily understand or is being selfish or whatever, doesn't see that for what it is. But I thought he was charming. I thought that they had great chemistry together. I liked him as a foil for Kit. So what did you guys think of Virgil?
I love Virgil. Yeah. It's like one of my favorite meet cutes I've ever seen. Like where like the girl is awkward, but like aggressively awkward, and like he just holds his own and never is like, oh, then I noticed her finally. Like he was put off by her because she was weird and won over because she believed in him. Like I love her when she's talking to her mom and she's like, he's a carpenter, but he doesn't really think that. Like she can see potential in him and believes in him, and he can do the same for her. And I think they're very cute foils and supportive characters for each other in their own stories.
And I love how well he like walks the line of being supportive of Kit and also being appropriately incredulous.
Yes.
You know, because in, you know, so the unicorn is ultimately real, but it doesn't, like, the world is such that nobody else expects it to be real, you know? And so like there's like a very specific, I think, sort of space that character has to exist. I think that was incredibly well done, both in the writing and in the performance.
That's a really good point about his role. He's us. Like we're falling for her, but we're also nervous for her.
We want to believe her, right? But also unicorns don't exist, and we know this. So it's like I liked it, like, visually, that whenever she was with him, she was her most true self. There were times, like, in the house, she's usually like wearing rainbow and stuff, but it's usually like pajamas or something that like telegraphs like, I don't feel great about myself right now. And when she's at work, she's wearing like the one frumpy suit that she manages to find. And it's all gray and like devoid of color. But when she's with him,
it's her mom's.
Yeah, it's her mom's, right? Suit. Yeah. She found it in the house and she literally wears it every day. It's dated. It doesn't fit her. It's, you know, definitely not Kit. But when she's with him, she's her most true self. She's got adorable little outfits on, like clips in her hair. She just looks happy. And I think that it's a great visual representation of what you're saying, of that he exists in a place where he allows her to be herself. He believes her. He talks to her. He is, you know, incredulous, because this sounds really creepy, especially when she's like kind of saying that she gave the salesman financial information. And so he's like, whoa, you know, he also gives her the freedom to keep talking about it. He doesn't shut her down.
Right. And a unicorn can totally be, especially like preparing your home for a unicorn is a great metaphor for like preparing for human connection and potential romance. And so he is like, she's learning to like love herself and work on her relationships. And then she passes up a unicorn and then holds hands with a cute boy.
Right. I mean, in the movie, like, references that sort of metaphor at several points, you know, the idea that like this is the kind of love that will never leave you. Like that's what she's longing for in the unicorn.
Yeah.
Also, you mentioned the outfits and we haven't really talked about them, but they're amazing. There are so many amazing outfits. I took a picture at one point of the like bubblegum pink suit and shiny tie that Samuel L. Jackson is wearing.
It's so good.
The first time that we meet him. And I was like, if I were to take a picture of every outfit in this movie that I love and want to own for myself, that would be all I would be doing. I would be pausing this movie throughout to document every wonderful outfit. And they're just, oh my God, the costumes are just so good. I love them so much.
We talked earlier about this having like a specific audience. And I think that this movie had a very like late 90s, early 2000s sensibility about it. And I don't know. It's something about the fashion also reminded me of that. Like she had like a little girl power necklace at one point that I'm like, okay, you got that on spicegirls.com. Like there was something very like a very almost dated in a way about the sensibility of it. But also, I mean, it was meant to hit home for you, me, Caitlin, and everybody else out there who this movie was targeted at.
Well, it's interesting too, like talking about the datedness, like that is a time, like if we're putting it in like late 90s, early 2000s, that's like when Garden State was coming out, that terrible movie Elizabethtown or whatever. Like that's when we were like learning about Manic Pixie Dream Girls, and I like that this is a Manic Pixie Dream Girl and it's just about her. Like she's not saving anybody else. She's saving up for a unicorn.
Duh.
Yes, this is if any of those early 2000s Manic Pixie Dream Girl movies were actually about the like Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
Yeah.
If any of those movies were actually about the most interesting character in those movies.
Speaking of the costumes though too, it makes me another character I really love, who is also maybe a little bit us, is Sabrina, who just wants to have her Etsy store of
small food items.
Small food jewelry. And she gets to call out like, why are you wearing a costume? And Kit is like, these are just my clothes. Like, I love how matter of fact Kit is in this world. When she can make it her own, she's just like, this is how it is. And then Sabrina has maybe the most. Joan Cusack and Kit have like a really great, like honest conversation, but all by herself, Sabrina gets to have this really honest confession in front of everybody in the in front of everyone in the boardroom, which I really loved.
I think that I'm curious if you guys have any like things that weren't your favorite about the movie or things that you would have liked to see or whatnot, because my one critique of the movie was probably inspired by Sabrina and that moment, and it's just that I wish that Kit had like a stronger female friendship somewhere in there, or that some of the people in the office were fleshed out a little bit more, especially because there's that like really creepy like sexual harassment aspect of it, which she sees and recognizes. And granted, the movie doesn't go like way deep into anything, but I think that there was a moment where she even says something like, am I pretty enough to be sexually harassed? And while Virgil has a what kind of reaction, it's never addressed. And the idea that the other woman is in the office, the mean girl, comes up and is like, you're not special, he does this to everyone, like that's never addressed. And it would have been nice if in her journey to being like her own kind of grown up, there was another female character there along the way, kind of thing. So that's my only like one little thing that it would have been like a wish list item or whatnot, but I don't know.
That also like rang true for me though, because I'm like, yeah, most sexual harassment does go like, it just, you're like, okay, how do I get out of this situation? And then that's the end of that story, you know? And
right. There's like no follow. Like she wasn't. Who was she going to report him to? Like that kind of thing.
He's the vice president.
She's a temp.
Like, yeah. Like I think that was interesting and like rang true. But I agree. Like I would have liked more of a friendship between her and Sabrina.
Yeah, I agree. In that I definitely would have liked to see like some sort of better female friendship. Like I think it would have been cool to have had that. I don't know, but I'm conflicted on this point, because while I like that was like a critique that I had, there's also a piece of me that like gets why she didn't have that. Like the idea of her being sort of lonely is fundamental to what's going on here. Like she feels like deeply misunderstood and lonely, and like that comes up a lot. So like some of it to me, I don't know how you would do both of those things. Both give her like a better female friendship and explore that kind of loneliness. And I also like the degree to which the people in the office weren't really fleshed out. That to me felt like also a little bit of a projection of Kit and her sort of perspective on the world. And, one, her perspective is rather self-involved, and two, like, because she didn't want to be at this office in the first place, she is like mentally flattening the space. And so that to me is how a lot of that like felt and read.
I agree. And it's kind of what we said at the beginning about this being through a lens, which is why it all seems flat and like stereotypical. So I'm not arguing necessarily for like the characters, the office to be fleshed out. I would have just liked a little more like explicit messaging about the sexual harassment. Like, you being pretty enough is not really the point, you know, or something like that. That like is kind of the thing. And I think that you can have her lonely for the most of the movie, but you can develop a relationship with a woman the same way that you develop a romantic relationship, where she's not open to it and she's kind of sabotaging it at first, and then like, oh, okay, I get it. I learned my lesson, and now I have a friend and a boyfriend. High five. Good job, everybody. I mean, and again, that wasn't what this movie chose to do, and that's fine. And I still really enjoyed it, but that would have been like the one little thing I would have added that I think would have made me additionally happy.
Yeah. It's like a hope I'm go away with for Kit.
Yes. That she figures out what to do with her life and her next job is great, or that I really wanted her to have like a gallery of her art, like they did like the little mini stable or whatnot of her art. I was like, sell tickets to that. I would go.
Right. Yes. That is clearly like they made an installation of her art, like of her lifetime of art. Yes, absolutely. Invite people to this gallery that you built.
To go back to your point, Mari, about like things that like I wish were a little bit different, is the one at the camping scene when they get into a fight, Joan Cusack storms off when she's frustrated and goes back to the fire. The one thing that didn't ring true to me about that scene was that then Bradley Whitford talks about how like actual struggle and like bad things are in the lives of these kids around the campfire. And he says to Kit, like, is that true for you? And then he walks off. It's like a mean thing that, like, if he says it and then walks off, it's mean. But I don't think that is what his character would do. I think he would just say, is that true for you? Like, he's trying, like, what can I do? Like, do you want me to be your best friend? Like, I will do anything to, like, but, like, and I don't think he would do that to one of those kids at the campfire, so I don't think he would do it for Kit. So that part really like stuck out to me, that I'm like, you have to end the scene, but just cut out of the scene. Don't have him walk off. Right. And that's like such a like weird directing decision that I just like, that really is like the only thing that super stuck out in my brain, that I'm like, that doesn't fit with what I know about this character.
Yeah, that's like, that is a really interesting point too. I mean, they clearly had to end the scene with that line because, like, the point is that, you know, Kit now has to ruminate about that. Like, she has to think about
but
it.
Then give us a close up on her and then cut. Right, right. But having him like do his mic drop moment and walk away is a very different thing than just cutting the scene there. I have a question. When Kit and Virgil are leaving and the woman is like, is this the store? Do you think she's going to pick up that unicorn, or do you think the store will be something different for her?
Well, I assumed she was going to pick up the unicorn, but now I don't know.
I think that both. I think that she is picking up the unicorn because
Schrodinger's unicorn. Just kidding.
Like he says, there's somebody else waiting for the unicorn, and her whole thing is like, somebody needs you, the unicorn, more than I need you. Like, maybe the unicorn is like, it can manifest as something different for her, whatever she most needs and wants. For Kit, it was a unicorn because it represented her imaginary friend and her need for human connection. Steve, like, maybe the unicorn is something else for this lady. I 100% believe that she will walk in there and it will look different for her. It will be a different experience, and like her things that she will need to like satisfy in order to get the thing she most needs and wants will be different. Like, all of that will be tailored to whoever this woman is and what she needs.
Cool.
Yes, I agree.
I like that. Yeah.
Somebody go fanfic it.
Oh my God. Like fanfic of what is your unicorn store, right? Because like, this is the kind of thing where it's inviting it, you know, like it's not, this isn't you doing something, like this is what the movie is asking you to do almost. I think is like write that fanfic about what your experience at the unicorn store would look like.
I feel like I just outed myself to myself as being so far across the adult line that the first like 3 things my brain rapidly ran through were all practical. Like $1 million. Like, no Shit, too practical. A house to live in. No, damn it. Student loans. No, too practical.
Laugh until cry.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, please send us all of your self-insert Unicorn Store fanfic. And thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. Thank you also to Caitlin for joining us this week.
Thank you for having me.
Definitely check out You're Doing Just Fine. So thematically appropriate. Did not even think about that. If you are enjoying this podcast, we would greatly appreciate it if you joined our community on Patreon at patreon.com/SnarkSquad. We would love to hear all of your thoughts on Unicorn Store. You can find a post dedicated to this episode as well as any show notes at SnarkSquad.com, or you can find us on Twitter at Snark_squad. I am at Sweeney Says.
You can find me at My Name is Marinés.
You can find me at Snarky Fern, which also I just feel like I'm just like adjacent to your guys' podcast.
Thank you, as always, to Steph and Jin for the theme music that is playing us out right now, and we will be back in your podcast feed again next week. Bye.
Bye.